Welcome back to the Abridged Lizardmen campaign. Last time, Temple of Skulls was spammed by some dragons. They managed to survive long enough for kroq-gar to come and clear up all of the problems around there. And that allowed us to complete the penultimate ritual, and we went straight on to do the final ritual. A load of Skaven appeared and we started fighting with them. We took down a couple of their armies and they took down a couple of our settlements, so a mixed result there. The Elves invaded from the south, but kroq-gar was able to stop them pretty easily. And now the Dark Elves are attacking Temple of Skulls again, so yet another defense is on the cards. As for our strategy, nothing too unusual here. We just rush everyone out to try and stop the enemy so the towers can do their work. And since we're rushing out as quickly as possible, it does mean things are nice and messy. We don't really assign units to the correct targets because there's no time. We just hit the enemy immediately and fight whatever fights come to us, hoping that the towers will allow us to win since they are so powerful. One thing the enemy has going for them here is the presence of lots of large units who are pretty good at countering this strategy because large units don't take splash damage from the towers, which makes the overall damage output of those things significantly lower, perhaps orders of magnitude lower. Now you can also see some of the units actually got past my screen and have started climbing the wall. That's going to be an issue. We've only got skinks up there, so they'll probably lose in just about any melee the enemy can offer. Their dragon was hovering nearby, considering taking out my stuff on the wall. Luckily it didn't go for it just there, so that's very nice of it. We did actually win the fighting here on the west side of the map, so that's good. This is where our monstrous units are, so they will have helped out a lot. But now we are going to have to rush them over to the east, the enemy getting more units up onto the wall. If they can defeat these skinks, they'll actually stop the towers from firing, and then the plan won't work at all. So things looking a tiny bit hairy with that now on the cards. More units making it to the wall. So many of these units are on the verge of death, but not routing. They lost almost everything to hack through the troops I sent to try and delay them. But now they're going to be out of the line of sight of the towers, and with only skinks to fight, a small unit may actually be able to do quite a lot of damage, especially if they rush through to the capture point. We managed to stop their rams out there, so that's good, but the units doing so are under heavy pressure. Also, the skinks on the walls are starting to fall. These guys perhaps skirmishing away, not sure why they're actually leaving the capture point there, but it is allowing the enemy to take a tower, and they're doing the same thing over here just by killing all of the skinks guarding one of the other tower capture points. And their dragons finally realise they can just come up onto the wall and annihilate all of our ranged units in a melee, so that's not looking good either. Now once the enemy have captured these towers, as you can see they have, they actually start shooting at my stuff, so what little I have left out there, just clearing up a few enemy survivors, will now be destroyed by the towers. We need to rush to get back up onto the wall ourselves and get underneath the towers where they can't shoot at us. So things looking very dodgy. It's an even balance bar. It's just going to come down to what happens in that melee on the wall. However, one unit of nearly dead troops is actually making its way towards the center. That could be enough to win the battle if it can take the capture point. I sent my skink priest to try and stop them. He can use his crow magic ability thing, not sure what it's called, to attack the enemy. It does a tiny bit of damage, but more importantly seems to rout them. And with the routing of that unit, everything else actually suddenly routed as well. It started a chain rout, and we somehow won. So another miraculous victory in one of our defences. We did have quite a few of our monsters left alive, so I think if we could have got all of them back to the capture point, as I was trying to do, we would have held out in the end if the battle had lasted longer. Anyway, a Pyrrhic victory for us. We lost quite a lot of stuff there. The enemy lost even more, so their army is completely debilitated. But our army is not looking too good either. And that is actually going to be a problem, because it wasn't just the Dark Elves who were queuing up to attack us there. There was a Skaven intervention also hanging around. You can see it there, just next to where the Dark Elves are now coming to sit and brood moodily next to the city, wishing they could attack it again. It's going to be the Skaven's turn now. So we essentially have the same battle, but we have much less stuff to defend with. So that's going to make our plan to delay the enemy outside the city significantly harder. We don't really have any choice but to try it though, since without the towers there's nothing we can do. We need the towers firing, so we'll just send what we do have outside to see what we can delay, and perhaps those units at least will be destroyed by the towers. At least the Skaven are actually quite weak against this strategy, because unlike the Dark Elves, they have lots of units which are very vulnerable to splash damage attacks, so we can actually knock massive chunks off the health of units with every impact. And their morale isn't all the greatest either, so we may be able to get some units to just leave and cool off the attack. We'll have to see what we can do. There's not much we can try in the way of strategy. Just have to hope the towers shoot at good things and do good work. As you can see, the enemy can very easily go and just attack the wall since they have such a numerical advantage, and what we did have was almost dead, so they quickly cleared out the stuff we had delaying them. There's not much out there, as you can already see. So now they'll attack the walls. We've got a few skinks up there ready to try and delay the enemy further, but you can also see we have done big damage to several units as they approach the walls. They're already getting destroyed by the towers, so it is pretty effective. They quickly open the gates and are into the city and can start going for the capture point. My skink priest having a very hard time trying to stop that abomination. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately, but at least there's still plenty of Skaven outside the city just chasing our routing units, and that gives us more chances to shoot them with the towers, of course. And several units were destroyed by doing this, which is going to take the weight off the men still inside the city, and whatever the result, mean that the Skaven intervention is in really bad shape and probably won't be able to do anything else. So they did take the capture point with several powerful units that unfortunately I can't hope to counter at this point with almost nothing left on my side. So they are going to win the battle, a valiant defeat for us. Although it may not have looked like it, we did actually inflict quite a lot of damage on the Skaven, just because while they were running about on the edges of the map chasing my routers, they got shot by the towers a lot. We probably killed more than 80% of them in that defense, so that's pretty good. They have raised Temple of Skulls, of course, so that's pretty bad, but not as bad as it probably should be, because the ritual will just somehow continue, and we'll just have to go take it back with kroq-gar later to make sure it's there for when the ritual ends. That's all that matters. Now you can see here, something very annoying is happening. The Dwarfs, who just sat in the mountains for the whole campaign, have suddenly decided they don't like us. They're going to come down from the mountains and start attacking our places in the desert. They don't make any actual attacks this turn, so that's nice. They're just setting up for them at the moment. And I'm noting on the right there that we've lost all of our trade partners. They really hate us for doing the final ritual, basically. And confirmation that Karak-Zorn are now at war with us. Pretty inconvenient. We're now going to have a big money problem with no trade partners left, and our capital's gone. That doesn't help either. Plus, the Wood Elves decide that they also don't want us to save the world and stop the Skaven summoning the Horned Rat, or whatever it is we're supposed to be doing here. They're going to attack us as well. So everything's going downhill very rapidly right now. However, as I've said before, all we need to do is keep our 3 ritual settlements, and it doesn't actually matter what happens to all of the others. So it's not so bad that we're getting all these new enemies and these Skaven are just raising all of these undefended places. We just need to keep 1 or 2 armies around and our final settlements, and we'll be fine. There's the Wood Elf army going right on the offensive. Looks like they're going for Antok there. Not much we can do to stop them. Plenty of Dwarves lying around as well. Not being all that aggressive. Looks like they might be just manoeuvring still, waiting to see what they're going to attack. And of course we're not really going to try and stop them. We don't have the resources to do so. We're losing money right now, in fact, so we'll just have to see what they do. I've got my 2 armies in this vague sector of the map, and they're going to start moving towards somewhere where they might be able to react later if the Dwarves get a bit closer. We'll see what happens with that one, as I said. Now we need to deal with the Temple of Skulls situation. That's going to be up to kroq-gar, although we do have to kill these elves who are still hanging around. I think this is the leftovers of the Elven invasion that came from the south after they confederated with the faction out there. Just going to auto-resolve these guys to death, and we do it without any losses, so that is great. They survive, so we're going to have to auto-resolve them again, but it's all good experience for our troops, who are for the most part actually at max experience, so that doesn't do all that much. Although I did recently replace a couple of the units with the blessed version of the Saurus warriors, so now we have to level them up as well. Anyway, easy enough to sort all that out. Now we'll start heading north towards those intervention forces. We'll kill them and then recolonize Temple of Skulls. On the way, the Dark Elf intervention came over to see what was going on, to block our path perhaps, but not really going to help since we can just kill them instantly. That's going to speed things up. The Skaven intervention, though, going to be much more annoying. They're going northeast towards Cursed Jungle, where I don't have a very large garrison, so even in their depleted state they may be able to take it down. The Dwarves are just going to keep moving about a little bit. They don't seem to have a concrete plan as for what they're doing, but they're going to raid in places and just be annoying. I'm going to ignore them all the same, which was my strategy anyway. The Wood Elves are going to be able to make their attack on Antok now, and not much we can do to stop them there, so we'll just let them take it. Although they're going to be a tiny bit nicer than the Skaven in that they don't just raise the place, they're going to sit in it, so at least the people are still alive and we can in theory take it back later. Now, one Skaven army is heading westward to go towards our ritual site, but they're in forced march, so they can't attack it right now. And the other two armies behind them are heading southeast, and that almost certainly means they're going for good old Cazuto, because the AI loves raising Cazuto. They probably want to try and do that again. So we'll have to start preparing our defences there. Not sure if they're even rebuilt at this point. Kroq-gar very quickly defeats the Dark Elf intervention forces in front of him, so that's good, a nice moral victory at least, because now the Dark Elves will be sent a message saying that their intervention has failed. As for the Skaven one, that's still going to be a bit of a problem, because we can't stop them at Cursed Jungle. We may just have to let them have their way with it and trap them in the corner of the map for Kroq-gar to finish them off later. At least we can go and recolonize Temple of Skulls. Also, I thought actually we can't reach it this turn, it just looks like we can, so now I'm going to have to wait another turn before that actually happens. Pretty annoying. Now, I noticed the Skaven army that was attacking us in the west has actually stopped in reinforcement range of our full stack garrison, plus I already had a full stack army inside this settlement. So I'm just going to step out and quickly auto-resolve them to death. We don't take any losses, so that's all well and good. And the enemy, while not being completely destroyed, are in their march stance, which means you lose any units left over from battles, so they're gone. So we very easily just dealt with that little bit of invasion. Only two more Skaven armies to deal with in the east. I think there's actually another one in the northwest marauding about that will come back later, but basically the Skaven threat isn't looking all that large at the moment, and I can now garrison Cazuto where the defences are rapidly under construction to see if the Skaven will go for it. The Skaven intervention goes for Cursed Jungle as I had feared. This battle was roughly even according to the balance bar, so I thought we probably should fight this, but then I had second thoughts, and the simple reason is that they have their super high level lord at full health, and we don't have a way to kill him. I remember having this problem in Warhammer 1 quite a lot as well. You can often defeat an entire army that's attacking you, but the Lord has such a high health bar, high armor and high defense that you sometimes can't really damage them, and they'll just slowly kill everything you have. So thinking that, I just thought, let's just auto-resolve it and then Kroq-gar can deal with the mess later. But we actually won, so that was nice. Maybe the Skaven aren't going to be such a problem over there in the end. The Dwarf still wandering about, not doing all that much. Then the Elves come and offer a peace treaty, even offering some money as well. So maybe they decided they do want to help us stop the world being destroyed, etc. They are going to keep Antok. Perhaps that was all they wanted in their heart of hearts. So we'll just let them have it, and hopefully their army won't attack us in the near future, and we'll continue to focus on other things. One Skaven army is going to replace the one we defeated earlier, and the army up to the northwest that I mentioned makes an appearance. It's going to start sailing down towards us, ignoring Elven ruins for a bit, so that's nice. We'll still have something up in that part of the map. Now I get attacked by some rebels up here. This has happened in various places, and I'm generally not bothering to show it. I'm getting all these chaos rebellions because we have no troops over here and we never really sorted out public order. I was going to fight this one initially because it looks very winnable, but I was like, well, I don't actually care what the result is. I got a defeat even though I expected to win that auto-resolve, so that was a shame, but it doesn't ultimately matter, as we've said, because we don't really need the settlements up there. Somehow we're now making money again, so that's good news. We can now go on an offensive against the Dwarfs because we don't have to worry too much about the Wood Elves. Those two stacks I had hanging around can focus entirely on them. And we don't really need them to fight the Skaven either, I should mention, since they're now down to a couple of stacks. We'll probably be fine against them. So I'll start moving to make attacks against the Dwarfs. Not that we really need to stop them here, but it would be nice to, and there's nothing else to do. Kroq-gar can start building Temple of Skulls, so that's the ritual now officially back on track. As long as we don't lose it again, we'll be fine. He has to wait a couple of turns to get his men back after doing that, but we've got some time to waste, so that's alright. More not especially decisive Dwarf movement going on now, although they did make one cheeky move. I think they tried to underway behind the two armies that I had approaching them with one of theirs, and that caused it to be intercepted. I was ready to fight these guys, thinking yes, let's have our first battle against the Dwarves in this series. Then I spotted these siege weapons and remembered that underway battles are just big choke point fights, and thought actually we'll probably lose. So I ended up going for an auto-resolve here, and you can see these siege weapons don't do all that well, so that was probably a much better result than we would have got fighting it ourselves, and the enemy were completely and utterly destroyed, just what we wanted, so that went surprisingly well. Then up to the north, they're just doubling back on themselves, not really committing to the attacks they're trying to set up. Not quite sure what the Dwarf plan is here. It's probably not to attack us by the looks of things, they're just distracting us, but we'll go after them all the same. The Skaven do go for Cazuto now, and unfortunately for us, we actually didn't complete our walls before they arrived. So we're going to have a regular field battle now with the half stack I had there and a half stack garrison versus their full stack. This time we really will need to fight this and see what we can do. The map was really small, so we actually deployed virtually next to each other and within missile range. That's probably going to be for the best because the enemy have artillery, so now that's going to minimise the amount of time we spend slowly waddling towards them and getting blown apart. Although the enemy can still hit us once we're into this melee, of course, so we do need to do something about it as soon as we can. The main fight's just going to be the usual mess, big blobby engagements. Unfortunately didn't get my spears to fight their rat ogres there, that is a shame. And they do have quite a few ranged units as well, so they're going to be throwing over the top of this melee the whole time. We don't have something like light cavalry that can very easily go and deal with this, so I'm going to try and deal with it using my own ranged units. You can see I'm sending lots of them on a flanking mission to try and take out the enemy's ranged stuff. This completely failed just due to me not realising that having 3 units grouped up like this just means they don't fire because they're all blocking each other's line of sight, so they actually couldn't attack the enemy, and that ultimately was why it was so unsuccessful, although I didn't realise during the fight that was what was going on. I did send my pterodons to stop the enemy's artillery. They can fight them in melee and might actually have some success there since the enemy's crew won't be all that good. On the right, on our right, I'm going to break through a little flanking group to go behind the enemy, although we're actually running out of time to do that because the enemy is starting to break through in the centre. They do have lots of storm vermin, which are quite a lot better than the usual clan rats we've been used to killing in the distant past. Plus they're buffed by their commander and they're buffed by the fact they spawned at a high rank. So overall our Saurus warriors don't really last very long in these fights. I also noticed this, they seem to have a debuff on them, and I'm not sure if this tooltip is supposed to say they're applying this debuff to me by attacking, but it does look like the debuff's on them, so not quite sure what that is. I think the Skaven might be debuffing themselves, maybe that's an after effect of some buff. Anyone who happens to know, do feel free to explain, just so I can know in the future if I ever need to. Anyway, as you can see, we're pretty much losing the fight. They're just killing all of our stuff. Our attack group coming in from the right didn't do anything, and itself is struggling to make any headway against the enemy's stronger units. My attacks to the enemy's rear and flanks haven't achieved anything, and we're just waiting for the fight to end at this point. Here's another look at my skink attack, trying to use my ranged skinks to do something, but you can see there are barely any shots actually going towards the enemy despite having a couple of units there, and I'm sure it's just because they're blocking each other's lines of sight by sitting on top of each other. Very ineffective indeed. Plus the Skaven have the advantage that they can fire while moving, while not all of our troops do, so they can run away much more effectively and still fight us. Now they're just ganging up on the last of what we have in the centre, which isn't very much. We did kill quite a lot of their stuff. Our guys don't go down easy, but the fact that they went down is going to be the problem because we're going to lose the settlement if we lose this battle. There was a bit of a phase after I lost my front line where I could keep skirmishing away and hitting the enemy with my chameleon skinks because they actually can fire while moving, so are pretty effective, but they routed in the end, so the battle just ended. It is a valiant defeat. I think we defeated about 2/3 of the enemy army by the end of that, so that's something, but perhaps not enough to stop them from taking a small settlement if they wanted to with what they have left over. And Cazuto is gone back to its natural state of being raised. That's just how it likes to be. They lay siege with that army that was moving westwards towards our ritual site, and their other army coming down from the northwest is just looking for a place to land by the looks of things, bypassing some of our settlements, not quite sure where they're off to. The army that put us under siege is just going to be easily defeated by an auto-resolve, since we can just overwhelm them with everything we have, since that full stack garrison's there, just like we did to the last army that came over. So we say goodbye to them, take a load of loot money, which is very nice. Our finances are now looking much better than they were a couple of turns ago. And of course the Skaven looking much weaker than they were before. We only have a couple of armies left to fight at this point, I think. And just to be cheeky, I'll just quickly re-recruit the units that we lost in that previous fight, and now we'll be straight back back to where we were next turn, so really no losses at all in that battle. So just a few Skaven left to kill, as I said, and the Dwarves to deal with, but unbeknownst to me, there are actually even more Skaven who are going to spawn, so we'll have another wave of all this in the next part.